How you doing, Fights fans? EJ Boxing Live here. So we're on to the next one. Caribbean's greatest fighters of the decade. So we're on to the Barbados Demon, Joe Walcott. So he reigned from 1900 to 910. So we're going to learn a bit about him and where he came from and where he got to and what he achieved in his career. So hope you guys sit back, relax, get your popcorn. Hope you guys enjoy.
Original Joe Walcott was from the West Indies, and he came over and he trained under George Dixon, and he was the first to win. He was the first a fighter of African descent to win the welterweight title in 1901. And these were guys, they all knew each other. It was a band of brothers. If there was ever a band of brothers in those days, those were the early black champions. Joe Gans, George Dixon, Jack Skelly. He's another guy that I dearly love. He was the Tommy Skelly, the Harlem Spider. Isn't that just a great name? The Harlem Spider.
Oh, Harlem Spider. Oh, wow. Hey, I've never heard of that guy before.
I know. It's just, but yet he fought all of these guys. I mean, they were all friends. It was just, I just want to go back in that time and sit in a couple of those gyms and hear those men talk. I mean, it fascinates me. It really fascinates me.
Was it for the three aces? I remember you talking about the three aces, but there was supposed to be four because they didn't match.
Well, I said there were supposed to be four. I think there should have been four. Jack Fleischer didn't want four, but anyway.
So for the people listening, so who were the three aces?
The three aces were George Dixon, who was the first bantam and featherweight champion. He was actually born in Halifax, Nova Scotia, in Canada. So really, Canada can claim him, even though he fought all of his really professional fights really in America. But George Dixon, he won that in 1890 and 1891. And the second was Walcott, Joe Walcott, who, again, from the West Indies originally, and landed in Boston and fought. Boston was the hotbed for all the fighters. That's John L. Sullivan, the Boston Strong Boy, and he trained with the same manager, Tom O'Rourke, as George Dixon. And so then the third ace was Joe Gans. Now Joe Gans was a little bit farther south from Baltimore, and his manager was Hereford. And so when the Dixon and Walcott, again having the same manager, Tom O'Rourke, that kept them in a very close-knit group. But certainly they all trained, and they were all in that geographical location of Philadelphia, Baltimore, around that centralized D.C. area up to Boston. And so it was a tight-knit group. In New Jersey, a lot of good fighters coming out of New Jersey at that time as well. But certainly they all won titles. These were the champions. And, really, truly, of that period, you don't really remember the other champions. You simply remember George Dixon, Joe Walcott, 1901, Joe Gans, 1902, and then Jack Johnson, 1908. So, for me, that was just a really divine period. I think that's why, certainly the fighters, certainly in my father's period of the 30s, why they so wanted to learn anything and everything from the black fighters, because they were considered the greatest at that time. You don't have any other big fighters coming along until Joe Louis, and then Joe Louis, certainly all of those, even Muhammad Ali tipped his hat to all of those, the aces, and they were tremendous.
Joe Walcott, the Barbados Demon, welterweight champion of the world from 1901 to 1904. Who actually coined the phrase, the bigger they're, the harder they fall. Bob Fitzsimmons certainly popularized the saying before he faced Jim Jeffries, but it was Walcott who first said it. The phrase belonged to Walcott, who despite his short stature was extremely successful against much larger and heavier opponents. He had fantastic stamina and durability as well as a proven punch. A natural welterweight, he was one of the greatest pound-for-pound fighters in boxing history and fought men weighing from lightweight to heavyweight during his career. Joe Walcott, the original, had the power to beat heavyweights. In fact, he scored a first-round KO over 180-pound Tom McCarthy fairly early in his career. Walcott fought a number of other light heavyweights and heavyweights. Walcott's manager, Tom O'Rourke, also handled heavyweight contender sailor Tom Sharkey, whom some historians compare favorably to Rocky Marciano. Sharkey twice went the distance with heavyweight champion Jim Jeffries. O'Rourke once stated, Fleischer, p. 198 to 199. I had to stop Walcott from sparring with the sailor because Joe dumped him on his ear one afternoon in the gym. Walcott hit hard enough to knock out heavyweights. Can one picture modern welterweights such as De La Hoya, Trinidad, or even Ray Robinson coing a 180-plus pounder? Robinson ventured up to light heavyweight once, running out of gas against Dewey Maxim. He never again moved beyond the middleweight limit. Walcott often gave weight to opponents and came out victorious. For one of his fights against Dick O'Brien, considered one of the best fighters of his weight, the August 28, 1895 Boston Herald reported, Walcott, according to Tom O'Rourke, weighed 138 pounds against O'Brien's 150 pounds. This ordinarily would be considered a great handicap. Few fighters would care to give away a dozen pounds. But so certain was O'Rourke that his man would win that he waived the weight. Walcott knocked out O'Brien in 2 minutes and 25 seconds of the first round. The August 28, 1895 Police News stated, Walcott now surpasses any of our welterweights, unless it beat mysterious Billy Smith in the telling execution of a single blow. I do not see how he is to be beaten by any foeman who will give him hit for hit. Any man except a very big man whom he gets his right hand onto fairly and squarely isn't coming up for much more. Walcott and his dumpy, dwarf monitor build, his hardness of flesh, his power of punching in the small surface he offers for return hits, is in a class by himself different from anything else in the field. McCallum wrote p. 194, Walcott was something of a physical freak, despite his size. He had the stamina of a bull. The National Police Gazette, October 27, 1894, supports this view. His neck is 18 inches and his chest expanded is 41 inches, which is remarkable for a man of his weight. The April 20, 1895 Gazette described Walcott's power thusly. His delivery was terrific, having the force of a pile driver. One blow from Walcott was said to be equal to 5 of his opponents. Nat Fleischer called Walcott Black Dynamite Volume 3, p. 196. A sawed-off Hercules, an abnormally powerful puncher. He also said men who fought him were sorely handicapped, that for all his opponents were taller, and their blows usually landed on his shoulders or on top of his granite skull. Probably more men ruined their hands on Walcott than on any other scrapper of that day. Walcott was widely recognized as the best welterweight in the world long before he won the title. The January 11, 1902 Police Gazette stated, from a Deconcal standpoint 3 or 4 fighters have been recognized as welterweight champion. But it was apparent to men who have knowledge of prize-ring affairs that they only held that title on sufferance because of an obvious desire to avoid meeting with a black man who was conceded to be their superior. Walcott won the championship on a 5th-round stoppage of Rube Fern in Toronto, Ontario, Canada. The Gazette reported that Walcott turned Fern into a jelly in 5 rounds. Such was Walcott's reputation as a fierce puncher that he claimed in newspaper reports that since no welterweight or middleweight will fight me, I am compelled to go to the next class. Will any heavyweights fight me? See Police Gazette, October 13, 1900. Walcott issued challenges to Tom Sharkey, Gus Rulin, and even champion Jim Jeffries, though they all declined to meet him in the ring. Some claim Walcott's record is spotty. Research by Tracy Callis puts his record at 9-6, 2-4, 2-4, 62 KOs with 22nd and 03 NC. Most, however, fail to realize that the many of his losses came after Walcott severely injured his right hand in a gun accident in late 1904. Initial news reports, such as the October 18, 1904 Philadelphia record, indicated that his hand might have to be amputated. Although his hand was saved, Walcott wasn't same fighter after this, and in fact he did not fight again for 2 years. In his 15-round fight against Jack Bonner, the Gazette reported that Barbados Demon shows his ability to fight faster than ever. He fought at a fast pace, throwing many punches, and only the final bell saved Bonner from certain knockout defeat. Walcott also had a good number of unrecorded fights. The Police Gazette reported, while on the road he knocked out at least 100 men. Among the high-class men he has beaten are Dick O'Brien, Mike Walsh, Mike Harris, and Tom Tracy of Australia. Some of his losses were actually wins where he was the victim of bad decisions because he was a black fighter. A number of his draws are rather dubious too. See below for an example. April 20th, Jim Watts, New York, D4. Walcott pounded Watts and floored him repeatedly during the first 3 rounds. In round 4, Watts went down to avoid being knocked out while he was on the floor. Walcott struck him lightly on the dia. Watts was down for at least 20 seconds. The crowd called for a foul. Referee Richard Roche knew Walcott was clearly winning and Watts was going down deliberately. He ordered the men to continue. Watts would not, so he called it a draw. Research by Tracy Callis. Welterweight Walcott actually had a remarkable record. One of Walcott's greatest victories was against Joe Choinski. Choinski had gone 28 rounds against Jim Corbett and drew with the likes of Bob Fitzsimmons and Al Kid McCoy, and would knock out a young Jack Johnson the following year. Choinski outweighed Walcott 173 to 137 pounds and was a 5-1 favorite to beat the game little Walcott. The Barbados Demon demonstrated his impressive punching power by flooring Choinski several times in the first round and gave the latter a terrific beating before stopping him in the 7th round. Tommy West was a pretty good middleweight who had fought 17 rounds with Tommy Ryan for the middleweight title, and Walcott clearly dominated him, winning 3 times, once by KO with 1 decision loss, 1 draw, and 1 ND. Walcott also fought a draw with middleweight and future light heavyweight champion Philadelphia Jack O'Brien over 10 rounds. Walcott beat a number of other top middleweights including Jack Bonner, Kid Carter, George Cole, and the ever-durable Joe Grimm. Walcott fought light heavyweight champ George Gardner twice, winning once by 20-round decision and losing by the same. He also defeated light heavyweight young Peter Jackson. One wonders whether modern-era welterweight champions would have success against the reigning light heavyweight champion if their opponents weighed in at 175. Mysterious Billy Smith was a very dirty fighter. In fact, he lost 10 times on fouls. Smith was good enough to win the welterweight championship and once beat Tommy Ryan, flooring him 3 times in the process. It was ruled ANC because the police intervened when they saw Ryan was about to be KO'd. Smith also had a knockout over Kid Levine. Walcott and Smith fought numerous times, with Walcott proving to be the much better fighter, winning 3 times, twice by KO, with 2 draws, and 1 loss by decision. Walcott's only significant losses were to George Kid Levine and Dixie Kid. His fights against Levine were handicap bouts where, because of contractual agreements, Walcott was forced to come in greatly under his normal weight. Walcott, a natural welter because of his brawny build, trained down to 136 for the first fight, which he lost on a 15-round decision. He had to kill himself to make the weight and was physically drained before the fight started. The second fight was for Levine's world lightweight title, which means Walcott had to weigh 133 pounds and the lightweight limit on the day of the fight. Walcott had no strength and faded badly in losing by 12th round TKO. The loss to Dixie Kid is significant because Walcott lost the title, though by foul in the 20th round. Sam Langford was already a great fighter by the time Walcott fought him to a draw. It was only 2 years later that Langford was able to go 15 rounds with future heavyweight champion Jack Johnson and went on to become the most feared fighter in the world, knocking out nearly all the top heavyweights. 3 weeks after fighting Langford, Walcott fought lightweight champ Joe Gans to a draw. That is the equivalent of De La Hoya fighting Felix Trinidad and the winner facing Shane Mosley within a month. 2 weeks later, Walcott badly injured his right hand in the aforementioned gun accident. Yet he still was able to defeat many top fighters. Walcott was just under 5 feet 2 and never weighed more than 148 pounds. His long reach and Herculean physique gave him tremendous power. He had great durability that allowed him to absorb the kind of punishment that would have finished most fighters. He was also an accomplished boxer who studied and learned from the likes of George Dixon and Bob Fitzsimmons. His success against men of much higher weights leads one to believe that no modern welterweight could have gone the 20-round distance with him. Perhaps the Chicago Herald-Examiner wrote a fitting epitaph on August 22, 1932, when Joe was hospitalized with a heart attack. Some veteran boxing experts rate Walcott as the greatest fighter of his weight the ring ever knew. Only a heavy lightweight. Walcott earned the sobriquet Giant Killer by the easy manner in which he topped light heavyweights and heavyweights. Joe died on October 4, 1935 after being struck by a car in Mansalon, Ohio. Both Nat Fleischer and Charlie Rose rated Joe Walcott the number 1 all-time welterweight. Walcott finished number 4 in the 2005 IBRO International Boxing Research Organization poll of its members. Cox's Corner considers him among the top 5 all-time welterweights.
And I have to agree right there, man. No doubt. 5'2". 5'2", people. And fighting heavyweight, Sam Langford. Oh my days. Oh my days. This is very special. 5'2" and doing all that. Joe Gans, another fight with him. And all the fight, Jim Jeffries didn't want to fight him. Like, he just crazy. Like, he offered out he often fought heavyweights at 5'2". That's amazing, boy. So that's another Caribbean fighter for you guys. And obviously very impressive, like Peter Jackson. And boy, there's an interesting study. So alright, we're on to the next one.
DJ Boxing Live here. DJ Boxing Live here.
Buster Douglas knocked him out. Buster Douglas, the fat bump, the leather
Yo, this is Chris Caban, chilling with my man EJ Boxing Live, one of the hottest, dopest boxing channels on YouTube. Check them out.
Some boxing needs some rounds on the EJ Live YouTube channel.
And he was the number 10 rating contender, and he had never been knocked down. And Sonny destroyed his mouth. Thea lost most of his teeth, basically with 1 or 2 left hooks.
Oh shit, boy! What was look at kids sleeping like Manny Pacquiao?
DJ Boxing Live here. DJ Boxing Live here.